Hello?
Okay,
Yeah,
we're on.
good.
Great. Well, I'm Jordan Novet, and I cover cloud infrastructure and quote-unquote big data and the enterprise and Microsoft at VentureBeat, one of the tech blogs. And I'm thrilled to be here. And I get to write about some of the startups that are in deep learning now. And I get more and more pitches about them. It's fantastic.
I bet you do.
And so Paul is one of these people at the helm of these startups. And I think I am interested, actually, in how you don't have like a background of coming out of Stanford or Berkeley and having some time that you spent with one of the four big luminaries of neural networking. And I just want to have you start by giving people a sense of how the company got started, because I think it is a specialty that gives you an advantage potentially.
Right. So we come at this problem from a very, very practical point of view, so not theoretical at all. We originally started the company in the call recording space and realized that there's not much point in having a lot of recordings if you can't get data out of them. So we, at that point, started going down the path of looking at this data, talking to people who understood it. I've actually been involved in the speech space for a long time, since 2000, basically. And so I've watched the evolution of the technologies and realized that we were finally at the point where, with a good amount of engineering and a lot of work with scientists, we could start providing solutions that had just never been seen before.
Mm-hmm. And one thing you were telling me yesterday is that you have a lot of data because of the fact that you used to record all these calls.
Yeah, so
training data.
And it's actually interesting and unusual data. It's not broadcast data, which really anyone can get. It's conversational data. And most of the conversational data that's used today to train systems is artificial. So people call in and have pretend conversations, and not the kind of conversations that a mother would have with her daughter, or that type of thing.
Just to put it in context, Andrew Ng was here yesterday, and he was talking a little bit about Baidu's innovations lately. And I just wonder what you thought of the deep speech paper that came out.
Well,
to put it in context.
Yeah, so we're, as speech people, we're really, really excited about what's going on with deep learning. As a lot of you probably know, the vision folks are pretty far ahead of us. And the reason for that is that in speech we had sort of two competing ways of working, and the HMM approach just was much more promising for a long time, and it's only recently with the advances that came out of Microsoft and then the Baidu paper that we've seen sort of this amazing potential of applying deep learning. So there are techniques that we've been looking at, that we're actually using in some contexts.
What do you mean? What are you using?
So we're using we work on speech recognition, we work on classifiers, and we sort of look at a whole range of techniques, and whatever makes the most sense, whatever if we can train a model very quickly, we'll do that. We leverage a lot of open source tools.
Like what?
So we're like Caldi, for example. Okay. And which we have the ability to train models sometimes in days. Right now we're looking at doing some very specific speech rec work, and if we can sort of restrict what we're trying to do within a matter of weeks, we can have a basic recognizer. And that's really exciting. That gives us a ton of leverage.
And you're in Austin?
We are based in Austin, yeah.
And how big is the team now?
We're 5.
Okay. So how do you find the people who are able to handle HMM and, for example, Caldi, or one or the other? Where are you finding these people when you're not basically, I would say, at the nexus?
So the thing is, these people are really all over the world. So one of my colleagues who's here is actually in the back of the room. I found in Cambridge. So one of our advisors is based in London. He sold a speech company to Google, and happened to know that this scientist at Toshiba was unhappy, and said, "I think you should go talk to him." So I got on a plane, went to Cambridge. We had a chat, and convinced him that he really wanted to live in Austin and work for a startup. And he sort of looked at what we were doing and realized that he could have a really, really big impact on the world.
Not like just be a cog.
Not be a cog in the Apple wheel. Or
Okay, and so you are seeing some M&A activity already in speech. Wit.ai just got picked up by Facebook. Do you see? Well, I just want to make sure people understand what you're doing. So what do you expose,
Sure.
and who's using it for what purposes?
So we expose an API that allows people to send us any kind of audio and video, and then we give them access to that content or to the data in that media via API calls. And so we're spending a lot of time bridging that gap, trying to understand what developers who don't know anything about media, don't know anything about signal processing, language processing, certainly not deep learning, what they need to see, what they want to get out of it, etc. So that's what our platform does.
And how fast does it run? I think we were talking about how long a piece of media is, like a video.
Yeah. So if we ingest a 15-minute piece of a 15-minute video, it'll take about 15 minutes for us to complete the processing. Okay. And you were asking about the range of problems that we saw. Well, one of the reasons we're an API is because we don't know what sort of things people want to do once they have access to this data. And we're seeing people certainly in the educational field, in the legal field, in media. So people are dealing with phone calls, people are dealing with news broadcasts. A lot of interest from the political space now because of the upcoming elections, and people want to be able to actually see what's going on television and be able to quantify it.
Not just look at tweets.
Well, tweets was last election. So now it's going to be tweets, Facebook, and video. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so I imagine that maybe you can improve things a lot more. We're at a deep learning summit, and there's a question of what tools could boost performance, boost time for processing, improvement as data scales. I'm just wondering what you want to do and what tools might be useful for that.
So we're spending a lot of time talking to the vision folks here, which has been really interesting because they come at things from just a completely different perspective. They think about noise differently than we do. We struggle with time, which is not a dimension that they worry about. So there's a big exchange of information happening here, and they use tools that we don't use and techniques that we don't, and so we're going to look at all these things.
Okay. And just what about the other open source projects that were mentioned in one talk by Greg from Google yesterday? Torch,
yeah,
for example.
So Torch, and I have to say sort of publicly what Facebook is doing in that regard and sort of giving back to that project is terrific. And Torch is definitely something that we leverage. Okay.
All right. Well, I thought maybe we could just open it up for questions for starters, and I could always ask more questions.
Great. Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, why don't I ask you about the field of competition? There's competition in a few areas with audio, and I just wonder, for example, if you want to expand things into visual. You're talking with image people here, for example,
right.
And I just wonder if you want to get into the area of annotating a video, for example, with some convolutional system.
Well, it's an obvious place to go. right now we're really, really focused on the audio, but you know, some of the conversations we're having are, well, what about the data in the video? And as long as you're presenting an API that developers are leveraging, is there additional information that you would want to pull out of the video stream that would also be useful to them?
Okay. So there's a question. Okay.
Yeah. So, is the question is that something we're going to do?
Yeah. Do you ultimately want to pursue that? I guess what you're saying is it depends on what customers are asking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're already seeing some demand for that. I mean, we have people who are using video APIs and our APIs, and then coming to us and saying, "Hey, can you guys start merging these things?" That would be interesting.
All right. And what if I want to do this in my own data center?
That's something that people in the financial services industry ask us a lot.
Okay.
And so far, we haven't committed to an on-premise sort of outside of our own cloud deployment. But you know, everything we do is containerized, and every decision we make, we consider the fact that somebody might need to do it on-premise somewhere. Because we do a lot with voice and telephony, that's pretty important. If you're doing a lot of processing with phone calls, you might not want to take an entire data center or call center's volume of calls and ship them over to the internet to us. Right?
Sure.
It might be better to just have all that equipment there.
Okay. And there's definitely a recognition that GPU is advantageous in certain applications,
Sure.
As well as other chip architectures. I just wonder where you see that as a platform, I guess, for what you guys are doing.
So all of the training we do is cloud-based, and some of the cloud vendors are talking to us about giving us access to GPU farms. Microsoft in particular has been very receptive to that idea, and that's something we'll definitely take advantage of.
Okay. And I think that the Google Brain has been continually impressive, and I'm sure it's getting better month over month or year over year at least. But I wonder if you see Google, which has so much of the talent in the deep learning realm, eventually offering some kind of API that might do what you do.
Well, there's no doubt that they'll offer APIs. Whether they go the route we're going is really to be seen.
Okay. I feel like
I think they'll offer APIs to sort of more fundamental things, right? We think of solving a pretty broad problem for people. So we just let people send us anything they want, for example. Whereas I think Google would concentrate more on some lower level technology and giving people access to that.
Sure. Okay. Well, remains to be seen.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, there's one in the back.
Do you want to comment on what you tried some of those approaches that people talked about yesterday about using things like recurrent neural nets?
I think the best person to answer that would be my colleague who's in the back of the room, and who's right there, and he'll actually be outside. We have a table, and you're welcome to go talk to him about sort of low-level stuff.
I know there's CEOs of other startups that I've talked to in this room, so I wonder if there's any interesting debate that we could get going. No one's biting at the moment. That's okay. Well, I guess I'll also say, what have you seen in terms of reception among investors now, and how is that different from what you've seen a year or two ago? We were talking about that at the after party last night. CEO of Loop AI was talking about that.
Right.
Very interesting how much it's changed. And I just wonder whether that signals something, bad, basically, because there's so much hype.
So there's a lot of hype, but there's a really interesting phenomenon, and that is that a lot of investors are recognizing the value of technology that gets better. Right? And that's over time. So you solve a problem for a bunch of clients, they send you a bunch of data, your technology gets better. And that's really, really interesting to investors because you're creating a moat. And at that point, your competitors don't have that data because you're the only one who's processed it. So I think they're absolutely right. I think investors are being very smart about this. So they've recognized that there are several aspects of deep learning, but from an investment perspective, that ability to get better, not algorithmically, but because of the data that you're processing is interesting and worth funding.
Okay. And now that you have more venture capital, are you hiring salespeople to reach out, or how are you going to make this into a more pervasive kind of thing?
So at this stage, our concern is making sure that we understand the kind of problems that our technology is being used to address, and we want to understand that really well before we go out and sort of make a big marketing sales push. So we're very conscious of the fact that the core technology has to be there before we try to go big.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, let me just also ask you, I was trying to get you to talk a little bit about competition before, but who do you think is doing smart things in the general deep learning pool of startups?
Oh my God, there's tons of people doing smart things, and I really like the fact that people are using deep learning to solve so many problems from so many different perspectives. That's been the most exciting thing over the past day and a half is talking to people who are taking this technique and applying it to different problems in ways that just no one expected. And that's from and it shouldn't be surprising to us in the speech world because we've just been surprised, right? So we're just sort of continuously being surprised by what's going on. And when I look at the landscape, there's just so much more to do, and the folks in this room and everybody in this field just has a lot of time to look at these problems and look at them from various aspects, and really push towards solutions that are more and more natural over time.
Okay, so not naming names.
No, there's no need to name names.
No names.